Hello, welcome or welcome back. As the year nears the end, it is time to talk about all of the reading we did throughout 2024 and some potential reading plans for 2025. I can't believe it's going to be 2025 soon. That doesn't even feel like a real year to me. I feel like we should be in like 2015. Time flies. Anyways, I want to do the end of year book tag. So we have lots of questions from Overhyped Books, longest book I read this year, frustrating reads, and lots more. So we are just gonna go over all these questions. I'm gonna give my thoughts and opinions and just kind of recap my 2024 year of reading. And as we go through these questions, please feel free to leave your answers to all of these down below in the comments because I would love to know your answers. I'm always curious about everyone else's readings and their thoughts. So I'm looking forward to seeing your answers as well. But anyways, the first question is an unpopular book you love. Honestly, the entire Kindred Curse saga by Penn Cole. Obviously, this had to be loved enough to be traditionally published, but I have seen more hate for this series than probably most fantasy romance series I've seen this year. I understand a lot of the critiques this series gets because the main character doesn't make the best decisions and it can be a little frustrating, but honestly, I understood it in the story. This is my #1 fantasy romance series of all time as of currently. I'm not one to read books in series back to back. Usually I'll read one book and I'm like, okay, let me take a break and read a different series or another book, and then I'll come back to this series. But I read all 3 of these books back to back. I think I read all 3 of these books in 10 days, which is insane because I think in total this is like 1,400 pages for these 3 books. And the 4th book, Burn of the Everflame, has not been released. No idea when it's going to be released, but I cannot wait. I literally cannot put into words how much I love this series. After I read these 3 books, I had the biggest book hangover. I just didn't know what to read, didn't know what to do with my life. I just felt defeated. So I can honestly not say enough good things about these books, and I just love them so much. And I also think the covers and the spines are really pretty. Second question, a book that was overhyped in your opinion. This is super easy for me. I'm going to say Quicksilver by Kelly Hart. Honestly, did not get the hype. I can understand why people would love this, but I can also understand why someone would hate it. I think the story and overall plot was kind of all over the place. It felt like 5 different books put into one, and I don't mean that in a good way. I don't understand the hype for this book. I gave it 3 stars. Like, it was fine. I was entertained during it, and I will probably pick up the second book just because I'm curious as to what happens next, but this would not be a top recommendation by any means for me. Third question is your favorite main character of the year. This is honestly hard for me because I'm not obsessed with any one character, but I like many characters in their story and in their book, but like on their own, don't really care about them. I don't know if that makes sense, but if I had to choose someone, it would be Tasana and Max from Daughter of No Worlds. One, Tasana, because she's not an idiot. I feel like in a lot of fantasy romance books, the female main character is kind of dumb or she makes very immature decisions. But Tasana is smart and she is not dumb, so I appreciated that in this book. And then 2, Max, because he is just the most wholesome book boyfriend in existence. I have not read a more kind, wholesome book boyfriend since I read this book. And the 2 of them really are just a power couple and arguably one of my favorite couples in all of fantasy romance that I've read so far. So I think these 2 characters just really stand out to me because they're different from most fantasy romance books I've read, and they're a little more mature and wholesome, which I really liked. I think those are my 2 favorite characters of the year. A new favorite author you discovered. For me, Carissa Broadbent. This year, I read Daughter of No Worlds. I read the first 3 books in the Crowns of Nyaxia, and I just have loved every single one of the books I've read from her. For a lot of authors, I can really like one series and then I won't at all like another series from them. And so for me to love every single book I've read by this author says a lot. I love her writing. I love all her characters she writes and the story and everything. It's perfection. I will say, for whatever reason, I've never had a 5-star read from her. I don't know why. None of her books have given me that 5-star feeling, but I 100% recommend every single one. Like, they've all been around 4 to 4.5 stars. So with that being said, I will literally pick up any book that this author writes at this point, and I look forward to continuing to read whatever she releases. I really recommend this author if you have not already read her. Next question, most frustrating book you read. I knew the answer to this question as soon as I saw it. It is a 100% Reign of Shadows and Endings by Melissa K. Roerich. This is a dark fantasy romance series. This was a 5-star book for me, which when you think of a frustrating book, you probably think of a book that you did not like, But I think of this book because no book has made me more angry than this one. Every character in this book sucks. They are all terrible. They are all true morally gray characters, and I could not stand any of them, and it just made me so angry. But the story and everything just drew me in so much, and I ate this book up in like 2 or 3 days, and this is over 600 pages, so that's pretty quick for me. I don't know. I love this series, but it also makes me so angry. Again, it is a dark fantasy romance series, so if you are interested in a dark fantasy romance series and have not checked this one out yet, I would recommend it, but maybe check the trigger warning, see if it is something you can handle. But if it is, I would recommend, and just know you will be very angry and hate everyone in this book, but it's also such a good time. Best adaptation to the screen. I honestly don't think I've read many books that are also shows or movies. The only two I can think of is Good Girls Guide to Murder, which is a Netflix series. And I did watch that show, and honestly, it kind of made me realize that I didn't like the book that much, because it made me realize a lot of things about the story that I just did not like. And so the show wasn't good. The book was okay. So I can't say that's the best adaptation to the screen. And then the other book I'm thinking of is The One by John Mars, which is a series, but I have not watched the series, so can't say if that's good or not. The book did not really like. It was a cool idea, but it just was not well executed. So I don't think I really have an answer for this one, but I do really want to read Dune, which I actually hear made for a very good adaptation, and the movie was fantastic. I have not watched the movie yet because I want to read the book before I watch the movie, so hopefully I get to that in 2025, but that is what I would assume would be the best adaptation to the screen if I had read it yet, but I haven't. But now I have some plans for 2025. Longest book you read this year. For me, that was, again, Heat of the Everflame by Penn Cole, third book in the Kindred's Curse saga. This is 761 pages, so pretty lengthy book. Honestly, this did not feel that long. There was another 500 pages to this book. I do not think I would have minded, but again, I've already said how much I love this series, so I won't say anything more about it. Now, shortest book you've read this year. For me, that was You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight. This is a middle grade horror book. Reading this made me realize I don't think middle grade is for me. It just reads a little too easy for me. I gave this 1 star. I hated it. It sounds really cool, and it sounds like it would be really good for the fall and like October month. It's this camp where they almost reenact Friday the 13th. It's almost like a haunted house, but instead they're at a camp and it's like reenacting Friday the 13th. And but throughout this book, it just took a very odd turn, and I did not like the reveal and how it ended. It was very odd, and it was just not for me. So more my fault for picking this up. Glad it was short, because any longer than 230 pages would have been too long. Next question is your favorite cover of the year. This one is a little bit biased because the cover is pretty, but I more so picked it because it is attached to good memories. When I see the cover, I think of good times. So take that with a grain of salt. But for my favorite cover, I chose Darling Girls by Sally Hempworth. This is a thriller book that follows 3 foster children and about their foster mother, who is not nice. And they have both the past and the present, and you just kind of go along. The ending was fantastic. I did give this 5 stars, but the reason I chose this as my favorite cover is because I read this in Hawaii when I was on vacation with my mom, and so this cover is just so summery, and so now when I see it, I think of Hawaii and spending time with my mom. And I read this on the beach in 2 days and just had a great time. There's nothing I love more than reading on the beach and just eating food and having a good time, and so this was just the perfect summer vibes, and it definitely helps that it was a great book, and I gave it 5 stars. And so for that reason, favorite cover of the year. A book you have not stopped thinking about. I think about the Red Rising saga in general all the time, but in particular, Golden Sun. Golden Sun by Pierce Brown, fantastic. I think about the combat and the action scenes and all the gore all the time, and the ending to this book has not left my mind since. I wish I could read this for the first time again. It was so good. If you read Red Rising and you're like, you weren't totally sure how to feel, please read Golden Sun, because let me tell you, Golden Sun is 5 times better than Red Rising. Loved it so much. Next, we have highest and lowest rated books you read this year on Goodreads, and do you agree? So I went through Goodreads and looked up every single book. For the highest rated book of this year. It was Dungeon Crawler Carl with 4.3 stars. A very close second was Morningstar by Pierce Brown. This had 4.52 stars, so just barely behind Dungeon Crawler Carl, which makes sense. Usually if you make it to the third book in a series, you're probably gonna love it. So it makes sense that Morningstar rated so highly, but I'm also not surprised by Dungeon Crawler Carl. This is not my favorite book of the year. It was such a fun time. It's fantastic. Lit RPG, basically following a guy and his ex-girlfriend's cat as they try to survive the end of the world. One of the reasons I think this is probably so highly rated is because you are getting exactly what you expect. If you go into this just thinking you're gonna have a good time and it's gonna give like video game, reality show type of vibes, that is exactly what this book is. It is so fun. I can 100% understand why this is so highly rated. Again, not my #1 book of the year, but definitely had a fun time, and I do recommend this book. For the lowest rated book, we have My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. This had 3.53 stars, which honestly, I understand. Again, this was not my least favorite book of the year, but I can completely understand why this was so lowly rated. One, Stephen Graham Jones has a very unique way of writing where some people love it and some people don't like it. I found it a little bit hard to follow and understand. I got used to it as the book went on, but I can definitely see that being a deterrent to many people. And then another thing with this book is there are a lot of horror references to horror movies and just horror lore. And so if you are not super into horror, don't know a bunch about it, you're probably going to have a hard time getting through this book because there's a lot of it. And even I sometimes was like, I don't remember what they're talking about, don't know what they're referencing. And so if you don't know anything about horror, you're going to be very confused throughout this book and probably won't really enjoy it. But this is a fun slasher book. So if you like horror and haven't picked this up, maybe give it a try and see how you feel about Stephen Graham Jones. I feel like he is a very divisive author. Most people either love his books and his writing or absolutely hate it. Granted, I am kind of in the middle. I do find it a little hard to read and I'm not like super inclined to continue picking up his book, but I'm also not against reading more of his books, if that makes any sense. Then we have a book with the most unique concept. For me, that was The Measure by Nikki Erlich. This had such a cool idea and I picked it up strictly because I thought it was a cool idea. In this book, I believe everyone over the age of 25, if I'm remembering correctly, wake up one day and they receive this box. And in this box, there's a string that tells them exactly how long they're going to live. And obviously with technology and everything, they find a way to figure out like exactly how long you have to live, whether it's 6 months, 10 years, so on. And so throughout this book, we are following several different people and kind of how they deal with getting this box and these strings and whether they open them or not and how they deal with how long they have left to live. And you just kind of go along for the ride. And you know, that sounds really cool, but this read very literary, which if you don't know, I'm not a huge literary fiction fan. And so that was instantly not my favorite. I found it so boring. I did not care about what happened to any character in this book. And we were literally just kind of going along with their life. And I was like, I don't really need to know what's happening in your life. I don't really care. And so I did give this book 2 stars. The 2 stars is for the concept alone. I thought the concept was very cool, but I found the execution lacking. I just found it very boring. But that is obviously strictly my opinion because, like I said, not a huge literary fiction fan. We have 2 questions left. So our second to last question is a book that you read that you would reread. I'm not a huge rereader, if I'm being honest. There's so many new books that I want to read. So rereading a book I already read doesn't really appeal to me. But if I had to choose a book, and forgive me for talking about this book again, but Heat of the Everflame. I just love this series so much, and I thought this third book was so fun because we get to see more of the world that they're in, and I just was able to envision everything very well. So it was pretty immersive for me, which was a lot of fun. And also because the 4th book, I'm assuming, will come out eventually. Once I hear that the 4th book is being released and when it's going to be released, I could see myself rereading this book so that I can remember exactly what happens and kind of reconnect with the characters and get myself prepared for the 4th book. So 1, for my love of this series, and 2, because the 4th book will be released sometime. That is why I would pick this book to reread. Last question, kind of a fun one. After 2024 reading, what are you prioritizing in 2025 for your reading choices? I have 2 main things. One can, I feel like a lot of people say this, but DNF more. I do DNF on very rare occasions because after I read like 100 pages or so of a book, I can pretty much know for sure whether I'm going to remotely like it or not. And so I want to get more comfortable with just stopping a book when I realize I'm probably not going to like it, because let's be real, life is short and there are so many books to read and so many good ones. And so I shouldn't be spending all this time reading a book that I won't really enjoy. And then 2 kind of ties back to my book buying habits. I would like to focus on buying sequels rather than starts to new series, because I think on my shelf right now I have at least 20 first books in new series, which that's just like ridiculous. Like, how many series can I possibly start? Like, I have over 20 new series on my shelves, not to mention the many other series I'm already in the middle of. So in 2025, I would really like to focus on continuing and finishing series. And so when it comes to buying books, I would like to focus on continuing the series I already own rather than buying a bunch of new series like I have been doing this past year. So those are kind of my 2 main things. And that will also, I think, help me cut down on buying so many books, because when I'm reading a series, if I like it and be like, okay, let me just buy the next book in this series, rather than what I usually do, I'm like, oh, this series sounds fun, or this one sounds good, and I'm buying all these new series and books when I should really just prioritize the books and the series I already have. So those are my 2 main things for 2025. But that is all of the questions. I love book tags so much. I always think they're so much fun. Please let me know your thoughts. I would love to know all of your answers as well. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching and joining me for this video today. I appreciate you so much. Thank you again. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will catch you all in the next one. I love you. Bye.